perspective, in terms of formalities, could you comment rapidly which is the formalities? How do they work in order to benefit from this regime, and what are what is the practice in your jurisdiction? It is enough, for instance, that yachts exceed 12 nautical miles in order to renew the 18 months that are initially granted to yachts to be placed under temporary admission. Christine, just to follow the same sequence, can you please comment?
So basically, in Malta, if a yacht wants to be temporarily admitted into the EU via Malta, then there's a process obviously to be followed. There are the documents which need to be submitted to the authorities, which include obviously the evidence that the boat is registered as a non-EU flag, the owner is non-EU, and also the value of the boat, including insurance. So there is various documents which we had discussed before, which need to be submitted. In addition to that, the boat will need to come to Malta so that the customs will inspect the yacht and ensure that the boat is the same boat for which the documents were submitted. So basically, the customs have to be comfortable, they inspect the boat, and then can sort of give the green light for the temporary admission to be accepted. With respect to whether after the 18th month, it is just enough to cross international waters. It should, but the customs do encourage and do feel much more comfortable when they see that the boat has been re-exported, especially if it has no intention of coming back. But if it does intend to come back, then they do still feel comfortable if it's re-exported, and that it sails to a non-EU port. So they encourage, and it will be an easier procedure if they actually see that the boat has gone to a non-EU port, like in our case, for example, Tunisia. So they expect it to at least hit a non-EU port. Because remember, especially Malta is very close to Italy. So if we just cross, there could be a mix-up. Is the boat crossing, international waters just to go to Italy, or it's because it wants to define the 18 months? And that is why they encourage and they want to see a non-EU port.
Okay, as I mentioned, the situation in Italy is one customs office to ask for the that the yacht reaches a non-European port in order to end the period of discharge. So this is something that is required to end the temporary admission regime, also in the case of sale of yachts occurring during the 18 months. We had a case of a yacht sold off 12 miles in the international waters in France, and the Italian customs authority didn't recognize the regime allowed in France with the 7101 form. So this was a case that entailed the seizure of the yacht because the customs authority didn't recognize the 7101 form filled out and certified in France as valid to start a new period of discharge with the new owner, which juridically speaking means also that the difference in the subject of the regime, so the person, the entity responsible for the regime towards the customs authority was not considered to be the new owner, but still the old owner. So this is something that really requires, in my opinion, a position from the European Commission.
Jean-Philippe, please.
For me, the situation is actually very simple in the sense that placement under temporary admission is automatic by nature. That's what the law says. The sole fact of crossing the frontier of the EU is a declaration of placement under temporary admission. The oral declaration, so the 7101 form, has as much value as you making a statement to a customs officer at the border saying, yeah, I have nothing to declare. That's basically the same value. It means that customs can always go back on that declaration if they find that it is not in line with what they expect. It's a self-statement, so it has very little value in the sense of proving something, except the date on which you arrived in the EU. But you can still prove that by any other means. Invoices from the harbor, invoices for fuel, invoices for any European supplier where you know you have a location of supply of goods. All this serves as definitive proof that you've been placed under temporary admission. The only difficulty arises when you're trying to discharge the temporary admission, because in France, they do recognize that when you do an international sale, for example, outside the 12 nautical miles, it stops the temporary admission period, and the buyer will have a new temporary admission period on returning onshore. But other than that, I mean, it's a lot less formal than what people think it is. And the filing of that 7101 form in France does not serve a lot of purpose. Even in aviation matters, we've seen circumstances where they considered that the period for temporary admission was validly discharged only by flying over international airspace, not even having to touch to an international airport or an airport located outside of the EU. In France, for boats, if you're not selling them, customs will tend to refer to a very old instruction that says that you need to take your vessel outside the EU and coal to a non-EU port. But that's only if they're being very picky, because the law is quite clear. As soon as you're outside the EU customs territory, you've discharged your temporary admission period.
Thank you, Jean-Philippe.